Welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. I'm Deremy Dove, and I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the man who's off IR. He's back.
Yeah, back.
He's back. Made the humble, great return, Mr. Jose Ruiz. What's going on, man? Welcome back.
Ah, man, and you already know, man. But Deremy, is so good to be back, dude. Like, yeah, you kind of mentioned it. I know I meant to put something out on social media, but I just figured I'll talk about it briefly. Not briefly. I was out, I had surgery. You know what I mean, in my throat, and yeah, I was down bad for a little bit there, but it's all good. We're back, and I could not wait, dude. I could not wait to get back on here with you, man. So it's good to be back, man. Thank you for
Yeah,
holding
yeah,
it down for sure, man. Thank you for holding it
yeah.
down.
No, no doubt, no doubt. So we took the month of September. Jose getting surgery, so we decided to take September off. But don't want anyone to worry. We're back.
Hell
We're
yeah,
still together. The
hell
band's still
yeah,
together. We didn't
hell
break
yeah.
up,
Nah,
and
never that.
we're going to be bringing you that great sports history content connecting the past to the present. And Jose, we got a big one to come
Yeah,
back. I mean, we're kicking off your return with a bang on this one, man.
absolutely.
I mean, this is an infamous game. It's one of the most iconic games in college football history. 35 years we're coming up on the classic Miami at Notre Dame, the infamous Catholics versus Convicts game, my man.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. October 15th, 88. That's the anniversary. Well, that's when the game happened. So obviously we're recording this on the 10th of October. So you guys, everyone knows, how we do this, man. Like any big anniversaries like this, any huge games like this, which this is a huge game. We're gonna definitely talk about it, and yeah, we've been talking about this for a little while, and I know, college football already kicked off, and again, if we were recording in September, we would have done a couple college, football games for sure. We couldn't wait to get into this college football because we've been talking about it even in August, with these documentaries coming out, with the Florida Gators documentary, the Johnny Manziel that got our juices flowing for some college football, and it's going to be a fun year. Michigan's number 2, Ohio State's number 3. Like it's going to be a fun year this year, man. And but what a way to kick it off, Deremy, with
So
this college
I
football talk.
I gotta ask right off the bat. It's the question that when we decided to do this game, we made it the other week. Is Notre Dame football in the past 35 years living off of this one win? Is this football program living off of this one game, Catholics versus convicts, in the past 35 years?
Yeah, it's living off this game and the almost win against USC in Notre Dame against Reggie Bush and the push, touchdown and all that, Matt Liner's touchdown. So definitely 100% because Notre Dame was trash. I'm gonna slow down a little bit. Notre Dame was trash before this, a couple of years before this game, and then we all know what happened to Notre Dame in the '90s and the 2000s and a couple of good seasons here and there. But no, I gotta say yes to that there. I mean, man, like I think this was one, it was a huge win for them, but they've been riding this for a long time. A long, long
Well, I
time.
say this because the lore of Notre Dame has been around for like a century, for a long time. So it started way before this game,
Yeah.
So we knew Rockney and win for the Gipper, all that stuff. But I just say, like you said, they kind of were having some down years before, and we all know what we've heard for so long. The last great era, quote unquote, in Notre Dame history was the Lou Holtz era. That's
Right.
from '86 to about '96. Like that's the last great Notre Dame era, and they won the title this year in '88. But we're gonna look at the fourth quarter of this game, and we're
Yes.
gonna break this game down. But if they don't win this game, or if they would have tied this game, they're not going to the national. They're not national champs.
No.
And I look at what came after this, which this, you see the CBS broadcast, '88, Brent Musburger, Pat Hayden. A couple years later, they get the NBC contract, which they're still living off of and still have
Yes.
to this day. And all this talk and people just going back to this game and all this hype and Notre Dame is this, Notre Dame's still good for college football, yada, yada, yada. If they don't have this win, I think Notre Dame still is the
Yeah.
marquee brand in college football. I'm not saying they don't have that, but they really, to me, they're really holding on to a lot less if they don't have this win in '88.
Right, because what else would they have? You know what I mean? Like, you got some Rocket Ishmael stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like, and some Manti Te'o stuff. Like, I don't even know, like, in between that. Like, I'm trying to think, and I'm not a Notre Dame fan, but it's like, I'm just trying to think anything in between all that. I don't even know any big. I mean, they had a couple good seasons throughout, but it wasn't nothing consistent. It would be one season here or there, and you know, that's it, man. And it was no big win over anyone. Again, they had that USC game in Notre Dame. Like, I can't remember what year that was, but when they should have beat USC, but they didn't. And but still, like, that was, they almost did. You know what I mean? Like, and people were riding that wave, and Notre Dame's back, and they're always back. Every decade, like, it's like Notre Dame's back, Notre Dame's back, and they're never going to be like what they were under Lou Holtz, what they were in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's just, I get it, man. Like, they were a big, huge thing, especially for a lot of these, like, this like older generation growing up. And I know I have a bunch of my friends who are Irish, and they have all the tattoos and all the Rudy jackets and stuff like that. And but that's about it, man. That's all they got. And my buddy, we were, I know me and you were talking about the Ohio State Notre Dame game this year, and he was like all about it, sending me texts and all that stuff. And I just had to let him know after the game, like, this is Notre Dame for you, brother. Like, this is where you guys are at. This is the best you're going to come up with right now, man. But that's a great question, man, because I didn't even really think about that. From time to time, I do like consider like Notre Dame, like, what are they about? Like, I know that now recently they're getting like, people are really trying to like trash their, like, not their legacy, because again, like what they've built in with Montana and all those guys, like, that's something special. But it's been a long time since they've been special.
And it's just I think it's just fascinating because, like you said, is always Notre Dame's back, and it's a school that really lives in its history. And
Yes.
People, we both love history. It's a fine line where I think it's great to represent your history and pay homage, but I think you need to bring your history, like, we, not to plug it, but like bring it to the present.
Right.
And I feel like they're a school that struggles with that, in my opinion. Where they stuck in the past in a lot of ways, and they're not willing to adapt. And I feel like, when you look at the Catholics versus Convicts game, quote unquote, from '88, it's not in, I hate to say it, not in black and white. It's not fuzzy. It's still, they had a 30 for 30 on it recently. The Lou Holtz era, those Lou Holtz teams with Rocket Ishmael and Ricky Waters, and later on, Jerome Bettis came in there and all those players. It's getting further away now as we're in 2023.
Yeah.
But it's still close enough that you can kind of reach out and touch it.
Yeah, no, and again, every once in a while they'll have a successful season, and like we just talked about, like, they're back, and it's like, what can happen if Notre Dame is back? It's always good for college football, right? It's like the Yankees, and it's like the Cowboys, whatever, in the NFL. Like, certain teams, if they're good, that sport is doing much better, right? And I think we're past that with Notre Dame, but when they are good, it's good for college football. Like, that's obvious. But even like we talked about this a lot when we do like Duke, when we talk about Duke and those early '90s Duke teams, and maybe throughout the '90s, right? Like even that, but they had a lot of success, right? Like, but it would not translate over to the NFL, and I think that was another big piece where you talked about a couple players. Ricky Waters was great; he was one of my favorite players. But like, even like Rocket Ishmael, like Rick Meyer, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, all these like superstars in Notre Dame, they go to the NFL and they don't do shit. Like, so now not only like are you not having that success as you always have, like now people who are not college football fans, who are like NFL fans, they're not even like seeing like they're not even like getting excited for Notre Dame. Because again, like, if you can get like a Tom Brady, right? And you like, what college did you go to? Oh, Michigan. Like, I'm gonna You know what I'm saying? Like, it's easy to do that when you don't have players being represented in the NFL. It's tough, man. It's tough to want to root for that college program. You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely, and I think in this was this era of like Lou Holtz, and especially from '88 to this end of his time there, Notre Dame still had the lore,
Yeah.
and in some ways, what I will say, what I will give this era compared to what happened in the future and present, they played tough teams.
Yes.
So when you saw Notre Dame like going into this game, Miami's number one, Notre Dame's number four. You're not questioning their schedule.
No.
Notre Dame played the tough team. Notre Dame was still like, oh, so we won 10 games. Do we want to go to this bowl game, the Orange Bowl, wherever? Like, I will give this Notre Dame era, like Lou Holtz played, he didn't duck people. He wanted to play you. And that's something I think where it's changed over time, where it's like Notre Dame, you never believe them. Like, I think people will, non Notre Dame fans, since this era, you don't believe them as a title contending team. Even so, sometimes they somehow make the college football, playoff four, or with Manti Te'o getting to the championship game. You're just like, this team shouldn't be here. They had a good year, but they shouldn't be here. And I feel like that's the difference. Like in this Lou Holtz era, when they were in those big games, they belonged there, whether you loved them or hated them. You couldn't take that away from them.
Right, absolutely. And even if you look at that season, like they started off playing Michigan. Michigan was ranked number 9. They were ninth, and they went to Michigan State, which is a tough place to play. Pitt, Notre Dame and Pitt's a big rival, especially at this time. They played Miami. Penn State, in the 80s was always, I mean, they weren't ranked when they played them, but, Penn State and Paterno and those guys were pretty successful at USC, they were ranked number 2, then West Virginia. And they were a really good team that season. They were, I think, like top 5. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Like they played a lot of big games. And again, like they were very competitive when they were with Lou Holtz in those big games. And I just think, once again, like that lore, like that popularity, it's like you're seeing them on TV, like they're playing well, they're beating some of these teams. Yeah, like Notre Dame is everything again. You know what I mean? And rightfully so, because again, he did a great job. Lou Holtz did, bringing them back from what they were when he got them to, again, '88. They were national champions.
The '88 Irish go on. They do go undefeated,
right?
And if you look at where the teams, the final top 10 poll, they beat 4 of the final top 10 teams.
Yeah.
During that season, so that is impressive. You got to give them that. On the other side, though, we got to look at the U here.
Yeah.
And they're defending national champs. They've played for the title the past 2 seasons. '86, they lost to Penn State. '87, they beat Oklahoma and they're national champions. And they're riding a 36-game regular season win streak going into this game. And they're coached by Jimmy Johnson. And this is when that swagger's really starting to take off. And, watching stuff for this game, like rewatching the game, they're being called a team of the '80s. Like that title's already going out there to them. And rightfully so, because you're looking at this team and you're looking at this squad, and there are a few plays from really having a three-peat for Jimmy Johnson. Honestly.
Yeah, they should have beat Penn State, but they didn't. You know what I'm saying? And again, like you're right. Like this isn't like the Michael Irvins at this point are gone, right? The Jerome Browns are gone, but like it's that second wave that was they weren't better, like you know what I'm saying, but they had a lot of talent, and it was because of that success of those teams from the earlier mid '80s, and yeah, they're loaded, especially defensively. Like defensively, if you look at some of those names, man, like it's like a who's who, right? Like you got some NFL talent for sure. You got the tackles, Cortez Kennedy and Russell Maryland, obviously top 3 picks when they were drafted. And, there was just so many names, and you'll hear them when we kind of like put the game on. And, but they were super successful. And I mean, we all know about the U, right? Like, you got Robert Bailey still playing there, Bernard Clark, like a lot of Bubble McDowell, NFL player, you know what I mean? Like, it's just they're loaded, you know what I mean? And that's just defensively.
Russell Maryland and Cortez Kennedy,
Right. They were top. I mean, Russell Maryland was a top pick. Cortez Kennedy was a top 5 pick, I believe. And They were just a great team, and Jimmy Johnson had them playing really, really well, and he was in his heyday, and he was about to make his move. Obviously, we all know what happened with Jimmy Johnson after that, but the U is the U right now, and they were buzzing, man. They were like you see it, you hear it all the time, like that cliche. We just ran into a buzzsaw. That was the U. That was the University of Miami at this point in time, and even if you look at their schedule, like that first game they played Florida State, who was ranked number one. They smoked them 31-0. You know what I mean? Then you go to Michigan. They beat Michigan, barely beat Michigan. They played Notre Dame, who's obviously finished fourth. They played LSU. They beat LSU 44-3. They beat Arkansas. They beat Nebraska at the end of the season. So Nebraska finished sixth in the country. So their schedule was loaded too. But they were just dominating a lot of those teams, though. So that's the difference.
Well, let's that's a good segue into what really the genesis of this rivalry, where it started, why like it grew into such hype was pre Lou Holtz. There was a coach, Jerry Faust. He was the head coach of Notre Dame, who everyone says was the nicest guy in the world. He was a high school coach, loved Notre Dame, but was in over his head.
Yeah.
And in '85, like it was another mediocre to bad season under Jerry Faust, and he had said, no one knew, but during his weekly press conference, he's stepping down at the end of the year, going to finish up that game against Miami, and we know Miami winds up routing them 58-7
at the Orange Bowl. Yeah,
at the Orange Bowl, and Eric Parseghian, former Notre Dame great coach, he's doing the game and talking about Jimmy Johnson should have some humanity for Jerry Faust. It's his last game. All these things like that. Jimmy Johnson, you've seen on like the U documentary, he had second string, third string in. He on the one play, they block a punt. Miami blocks a punt from Notre Dame. They have 10 guys on the field.
Yeah.
And they still block the punt. So you heard a lot about, they're running up the score.
Yeah,
this isn't
integrity
right.
Of the game, yeah.
All these talks. Jose, something popped into my mind, even before we can get into like why they said that about Miami and all that. But you know what hit me? And I want to see what you thought. When you look at like previous generations, they've looked at millennials, and I guess you could say Gen Zers, when it comes to sport and competition, about these participation trophies and
right.
Everyone gets a trophy. We hate that. It's sport. But when I was getting ready for this episode, I'm watching all this talk about, this is in '85, about these Notre Dame, you run up the score and all that stuff. I don't know how you think about this. I'm like, the hypocrisy.
Yes.
That you're looking at future generations and going, what about the competition and all that stuff, when you have it so clear about, they're running up the score, Notre Dame, poor Notre Dame. And there's other clips you can find, too, of, like, in the 80s and different times where it's like, when people don't like it, they're getting whooped. Then you're running up the score, and that's right. Not fair and all this. And I just want to point that out. Like, you want to come at future millennials and all that about, participation trophies. You were doing the same thing here back in '85, in my opinion.
And the thing is, I think it was happening because it was Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like, if it was Pitt, or like we just mentioned earlier, or if it was Michigan State or whatever, like, I don't think it would have been that big of a deal. You know what I mean? Like, it would have just been another blowout in the books for Miami. Let's wrap up the season. Let's get to the bowl season, right? Like, it was because it was Notre Dame, right? And they were getting embarrassed on national TV. And what's crazy is, and somebody, I can't remember who it was, mentioned it in that 30 for 30. And I thought about it too, before, like, I heard the guy say it, but it's like nobody was saying anything when Notre Dame was blowing out Navy 70-10 or something like that. No, that was okay, right? Like, when they're beating teams like, whoever, USC, like, and they're blowing them out, and it's like, look at the competition, like, you know what I mean? Like, look at those tough Notre Dame boys, like, like playing to the whistle and to the end of the game, like, that's all right, you know what I mean? But when you have a team like the University of Miami, and let's keep it real, like, it was because, like, the culture and, like, the swagger, and they were celebrating after touchdowns and after sacks, and people did not appreciate that. That's the problem. That was the real gist of the problem. It was like not that they were losing, it's like how they were losing and what the other team was doing to them. They were embarrassing them and talking shit to them and all that. Like, hey, like you came in and you thought like this was going to be some like, and they mentioned it. I don't know if it was Chris Ordich or somebody. It was like a funeral. We were walking out there to that game and everybody was all sad. Like, I don't know why Jerry Fox did that at the beginning of the week. You know what I mean? Like I would have waited to the end of the season, but whatever. But no, like this is sports. You know what I mean? Like Jimmy Johnson said, he's like, we're gonna play, and then if stuff happens, and stuff happens. I can't tell my guys to like let up on that because that's when dudes get hurt, things like that. And this is again, man, like when they were doing it, it was cool, but when they got it done to them, it was a huge problem.
No, and I think you're right. It's Notre Dame, and that put a bigger spot. And I think this, to me, helped to put this started the controversial opinion of Miami. Yes. Started with this.
Yep.
Before the fatigues at the Fiesta Bowl the next year against Penn State and all that, it started here because this is on that big stage, and them getting embarrassed and the primetime game, and it was Notre Dame. But I think you're right. The fact that it was Notre Dame made it people get upset. But for me, that's where it's worse.
Right.
That's where it's worse because you're not crying. I respect it a little bit more if you were doing that for a smaller school, for a
right.
Pitt or the school like that. But you're doing it for like big bad Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, the hypocrisy. And I just point that out because like so many people will get upset now. And how you feel about like participation awards in sports, that's another debate. But don't act like in their own way it wasn't happening back then too, because this is a clear sign of it.
Yeah, because you hear all the time, you see it on social media all the time, where people talk, and I agree with you 100%. It was a good correlation here. So people do that all the time. When I played, or when teams in the 90s, they weren't worried about this and this and that. Oh, you need a dome stadium, this, like all types of stuff. I was watching a game with Alex, and the Eagles just played at the Rams in SoFi, and I was showing him. I was like, man, that dome is a beautiful stadium. Like you can see through the dome, and he was like, well, why don't we have a dome? Every team should have a dome. And I was like, no, they shouldn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I just explained that to him, but I caught myself kind of like, get off my lawn type of stuff. Like, no, like he's young, dude. Like, I get it. They should, maybe all NFL stadiums should have a dome. But again, to your point, like, you're exactly right. Like, this is what the older guys tell, like, the younger kids, like, they didn't do when it was really still happening.
Right. It was still clearly going on and happening. And I think just fun to point out for people to just think about that. I also wanted to ask you because, I'm looking at the correlation of it's a book I read, Common Enemies, about Miami Hurricane football in the 80s and Georgetown basketball in the 80s. And a part of what made both schools and both these teams hate it was definitely it was racial.
Yes.
And definitely it was the swag and how they won. But also, it was that they weren't traditional athletic powerhouses. Georgetown in basketball, Miami in football. And it made me kind of wonder and think, Jose, if you can even have Jimmy Johnson to coach, the same players, but if they're at a Michigan, in Alabama, Oklahoma, USC, one of those, there's a few schools who are those traditional, Ohio State, those traditional powers. Do you think the Heat would have been the same if this is Ohio State running up on Notre Dame back in '85 and all those things? Do you think the Heat would be the same?
I don't, man. Like I people don't like new things. You know what I mean? Like you're seeing it, and I was trying not to bring this up because we got something cooking for one episode, and we got a special guest hopefully coming on with us, and I definitely wanted his opinion on this. But it's like what's going on in Colorado. I think it's the same thing with Coach, with Deion Sanders, and it's almost the same thing where it's like they're in your face, but it's not a traditional school. if he would have went again, like to US, to your point, to USC and started doing all of this, oh, he's bringing USC back. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. And I think I agree with you, Deremy, because I think if this is happening in different certain schools, if it's Notre Dame doing it to somebody else, you know what I mean? Like it's there. People are looking at it completely different. You know what I mean? And it's just I always knew Jimmy Johnson was a great coach, and I appreciate how you. I know you're a big fan of Jimmy Johnson, and I know I'm sure we got listeners who are big fans of Jimmy Johnson. But like talking about him a lot with you, kind of like made me look into it more. And I love Jimmy Johnson now, like especially with this time with Miami, like because he could have been a guy again. He's Arkansas, like you know what I mean. Like, he played in Arkansas, coached there, like coached in Oklahoma. He could have been more tight to the vest, telling them to calm down, and he was not doing that because he knew it was important for them. And he was like, "No, like I want y'all to play like this," you know. And so he's got like a special place for me, man, because I can appreciate that. But if this is going on in Penn State, people are not like people are excited. You know what I mean? Like they're definitely excited. So I agree, man. Like I just think the University of Miami got a tough start, especially in the '80s, because it was something different and it was completely new, and people don't like that, especially in like college athletic with like the good old boys. They're not going to like that, especially if you're good, and that's what happened with Miami. They were amazing.
And these are the things that I feel like it took college football, which was already very popular, but still very regional.
Yes.
You know, we got to look at what Miami did for college football, and, you know, cable's emerging, all these different ESPNs coming on, emerging as well. And this rivalry, I kind of feel like, because it started brewing, you know, Lou Holtz, this game led to Lou Holtz coming in.
Yeah.
And these teams started playing every year, and it kind of built up, and Miami had that bullseye, but everyone was watching. Everyone loved or hated them, and that's what led to this whole Catholics versus Convicts title, which we'll you know, we can get into right now about just like that's what the game is known for. The hype was there then; it's still known as that to this day, the 30 for 30. But let's look at what that, which I 99% positive the name wouldn't pass today, or it'd be met with a lot of fight. I think people would try it. It would just be met with a lot more fight with social media and everything. But just what that name represents, and I feel like the movie 30 for 30 didn't really even hit it hard enough.
No.
About just what the title Catholics versus Convicts and what that really is saying.
Well, they couldn't hit it. It's like they couldn't get really honest with it because they were the ones who did it. Like, you know what I mean? So they couldn't really. I think if they do that, they put in themselves out there like that, and obviously they're not going to do that. But it felt like to me, and again, I didn't watch this game live, but you know, when I got old enough and you know I got into college football, this was one of the first games that I can remember hearing about, and right away, like it just felt like Notre Dame was like this, like I don't mean it like this, but like the White Knight, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like he was coming to slay the dragon, and everybody couldn't wait, and you know, like it was just like the knight takes the helmet. He's got beautiful blonde hair, like you know what I'm saying? Like in those movies and fairy tales, like it feels like that. You know what I mean? And even like if you go back and look at the 30 for 30, it still feels like that. You know what I mean? Like Notre Dame was like this pure thing that was coming and erased this terrible thing that's down there in Miami. Even in that documentary, I was just watching it just to kind of like get ready for the show, and it was a lineman. I can't remember his name, but even the way he was talking about it, like he was like, yeah, you know, you got those guys in Miami, they got the beach, they have access to all this stuff, you know, and I'm like, what do you mean by that? Like, and again, I'm not sitting here saying he was like he was saying like saying that racially, but still, it was just a weird thing to say. And he's like, you know, Notre Dame, we pride ourselves in doing it the right way, like, and like I hear stuff like that, man, and that really irks me. You know what I mean? Because why? They're not doing it the right way. Why? Because they're celebrating after a sack, they're celebrating after a touchdown. Like to me, that's fine. Like, that's not the wrong way to do things. So I always looked at it like that, and I wish that 30 for 30, like, these guys weren't so involved in it. It would have been somebody else, because then they could have really, like, got into that. But I think today, man, like that, it would have been a lot. I think this game would have been even more popular because of that if it was happening today.
And I think what I get bothered by is the fact that I don't think they would have done those shirts if it wasn't Miami. If it was a USC or Ohio State, I don't believe that they would have made those shirts. Even with like a good amount of black players on the team, I still think, okay, because when you're winning, it's all okay when you get those traditional powers. You make excuses, you cover up. I think because it was Miami, and Jimmy Johnson was not a popular. He rubbed people the wrong way in college, and when he got to the NFL, he did it his way, which is why we both respect him. And these players did it their way, and it was this little school in Coral Gables, which kind of by what you said kind of shows is not a football power. And honestly, after this run, we've kind of seen it with Miami. They don't have the resources that Notre Dame and Alabama and Oklahoma and Texas have. They don't have that. That's why that run was so magical. It took some special people to do it. It wasn't like this should have been happening for 80 years. No, it was a one-time thing. And so the big thing for me is also, and I know we're better at this now in society, where when you hear 18 to 21, we say, oh, yeah, they're kids. And I know back then we didn't say that a lot. I think it's like, oh, you're grown.
Yeah.
But it's like they're 18 to 21-year-old young kids, young men who make mistakes. And guess what? On Notre Dame, those 18 and 21-year-olds, they made mistakes too. Was it as publicized? But like I know Chris Zordich said that. He goes, we didn't have angels on our team either. So it's like, but you're going to highlight these guys. But they were young men trying to grow up and on the national stage, national spotlight. And at that, you're already calling them convicts. Yeah. And that's what just sticks to me. And that has stuck 35 years, is that you're calling them convicts,
Because it's an easy way to go. It's like a traditional way to go too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have Miami, who was targeted that way, and how can you target somebody like that that's going to, like, bring them down the easiest? You attack their character, right? Like, and as soon as they make a mistake, boom, and you, like, publicize it, and look, this is what we're talking about. Like, they did it with UNLV, that's college basketball, but it's the same thing. Like, as soon as they did it with Georgetown too, like, they were calling that team thugs, and how aggressive they played, and they're playing ball. You know what I mean? Like, and then that's what they're doing. And like, I just think it's like the template, right? Like, it's like, how come they're doing it with Colorado now? Like, it's crazy. Like, and it's just the same agenda, the same template, man. Like, let's just use this because it works. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if you really think about all these schools who, publicize like the culture and like all of that stuff, like, they get immediately attacked, and they get attacked in the media by coaches, by everyone. You know what I mean? Like, and again, like, for like fans of Notre Dame to immediately go to this, and even in the documentary, it was like, oh, this is such a cool idea. You know what I mean? Like, no, the hell it's not, man. Like, that shit is ridiculous, man. Like, and as soon as they talked about it in the documentary, yeah, I'm going to go to him with this idea. Oh, it's gold. Let's do it. It just goes to show you, like, 30, whatever, what was that, 2016, they made that 30 for 30 came out, and these guys still don't understand, like, what they did. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
and that's where, because I get it, because what you said earlier, yeah, people don't want to say it, but I would have much more respect if they took that approach, because you could, and guess what? I think a lot of people would, honestly, because to me, the biggest crime was not that, oh, that kid couldn't walk on the basketball team, Notre Dame basketball. The biggest crime was like, nah, you labeled these guys convicts, and that can stick with, Cleveland, Gary, Leon, Cersei, all these players for 35. Oh, yeah, you Catholic versus convict. You on the convict side.
Right.
You labeled that and sold it. I even looked at Brent Musburger And I've never I remember I played a clip from him on the Dan Patrick Show a few years ago when a more recent Notre Dame Miami game, and he was just still one of the most exciting games I ever was a part of. Oh wow, the Catholics versus the Convicts, and even in there, like he made a big deal, like almost I had the shirt. I decided not to hold it up. You're damn right you shouldn't hold up the shirt. What are you talking about? Like,
Oh
hooray,
man,
Brent Musburger, but and again, don't get me wrong, Brent Musburger was a great commentator. I
he
do like him as a
was.
commentator, but he's so establishment. It's not even funny how just establishment he is and was back then. And it's just like people should be ashamed of themselves, but this game is still it lives on. That name lives on, and like that's why I looked at it. Notre Dame, for all the wrong reasons, this game has carried them, in my opinion. This program, they've ridden that win for 35 years and counting.
And
Still
counting.
doing it.
Yeah.
Still doing it, man.
And I feel like this 30 for 30, like just even like threw some gas on that fire and like allowed them to like, oh, wait a minute, this is a whole new generation. And oh my God, I didn't even know that. Like that's great. And like they're living off that too. And it's a shame. And even Brett Musburger, to go to that real quick, to kind of like double back a little bit, it's when he was interviewed, right, for that 30 for 30, they were talking about Tony Rice and how like, and that's another side of it, right? Because that you can see how they treated even like their own player. You know what I mean? Like, and Tony Rice was getting all this like racial slurs being like directed to him, and he tells a story where he said hi to this kid, and the dad was like, "Don't be like him. He's a dummy," or something like that.
Yeah.
And he said he shook the kid. I wouldn't have shook that kid's hand. I'm like, man, get the hell away from me, man. Like, and
Yeah.
he said he went back to his dorm and started crying. Like, and that's their own player. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's how they treated him. So you can imagine again, like that was already embedded. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but even when Brett Musburger was talking about Tony Rice, he was like, I'm paraphrasing, but he was just like talking about like, yeah, they helped him out and they taught him how to study. And he said, isn't that what like higher education is all about? But where's that same energy for Miami? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's great for Notre Dame. And he's right. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think that is higher learning. You teach these individuals how to learn and study and do all that stuff, right? That you're supposed to do in college. But that same energy and that same mindset has to go to these other schools that maybe are doing it a little differently, but that doesn't mean they're bad kids. They're
you
not.
look at it, the graduation rate under Jimmy Johnson was in the 90-something percentile
Right.
when he was at Miami. That never got mentioned back then, and
Right.
doesn't get mentioned now, really. Besides Jimmy Johnson and those Miami guys having to say that, like these kids under him, they were graduating. That mattered to him, like because Jimmy Johnson said he was the first in his family to get a 4-year degree. So he said he brought on a lot of young men who no one in their family had 4-year degrees. A lot of those guys on both sides of Miami became future coaches, so that doesn't get talked about, but it's just that they're convicts. And you're right. I'm glad you brought up. That's a good point, the Tony Rice stuff, because that is what we miss a lot of times is these are all people, but they become objects or just,
Right.
they're just an athlete, but no, they're human beings. And like, Tony Rice is a better man than me because I'm not shaking that kid's hand, and I'm probably popping off saying something real bad, especially at young me, being he was 18, 19, so I know young Deremy is saying stuff that's not going to go out to that father because I heard what you just said.
Right.
So it's like Tony Rice was a better man than me, and I wouldn't want to play. Why? Like, and people can say that's 10%. That's not majority fans, and I hear you. It's still though like that minority who's doing that. If that's the case, that's a strong minority who's saying those awful things to you, and it's hard to block that out.
Yeah, and then and a point in your life where you're struggling, and oof, man, that's it goes to show you what type of individual he is. Like, you know what I mean? Like to battle through that and still come out on top, right? And succeed and then do very well. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I can imagine like that dad and that kid watching that game, and like I would hope that he would feel like an idiot, but he probably does not. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's I I was just kind of like thinking that when I was rewatching that, like, wow, like, the difference of opinion, like for each program, and it's night and day, and it really shouldn't be. And I don't even mean like the Catholics versus the convicts thing. Like I just mean like how they look at like institutions and like how they're teaching and all that stuff. Like that was just night and day, and they were basing it off of these kids celebrating. And yes, so there's some of these there were some of them getting in trouble, absolutely. Like you know what I'm saying, like, but there were kids getting in trouble everywhere in college football.
Mm-hmm.
So
Then, now, and forever, show me
right,
a program, show me a university that you're going to have young people, because you have old people making mistakes and getting in trouble. You're going to have young kids, young men and young women at college making mistakes and getting in trouble. Like it's you hope they can learn from it and bounce back, but like it's part of the growing process for all of us. So it's just that doesn't. But when you're different, you just get labeled that and what's wrong with you. But when we look at this game, and you see what the things that Notre Dame did, and this happens all the time, and there's so many things, which is, like you said, something new comes up, it starts to having success against the establishment, the old guard. People don't like it, right? But what always happens, you start copying what the newness is doing, and then you bring it on, and then it's, no, we're not copying. We just changed our style a little bit. We just changed our recruiting tactics. No, you saw what those boys in Miami were doing, and you saw them winning, and Lou Holtz, that's what changed. We got to go out here, and we need to get some of these players who can go in and play physical Notre Dame football. That's what but he went out and said, we need guys like that. Yeah. That's pretty much what he did, and that's what changed. Because you see, if you watch this game, Notre Dame's got swagger and got fight to them too now. Yeah. It's not like they're not just doing, the Hail Mary after every play and, getting on one knee and praying. Like, this team had fight too. He saw what Miami was doing, and he went out there and did it.
Right. And the first thing I think about when I think about, like, those University Miami teams, the football teams, obviously, is speed. You know what I mean? Like, Jimmy Johnson's philosophy was always, he wanted speed everywhere. He had that philosophy in Miami. He brought that philosophy in the NFL, and that's why them Cowboy teams were so successful, especially defensively. He has speed all over the field, and I think Notre Dame started to do that too. Like, because that we'll see when we watch this game. That defense is pretty quick. Like, they got some guys moving around in that defensively, man, and you can see it. Like, and watching this game, man, you see a couple of these interceptions and things like that. Like, these guys are moving pretty quick, man. And that's, I think, to your point, Deremy, like, there wasn't a lot of coaches doing that in college football, for sure, in college football. And I think once people started seeing the success Miami started having, it's a copycat league, and that's every league that you play in. And they were definitely doing that as well. And they had, like you said, those resources. This is Notre Dame. You're going to want to come play here. And look at Tony Rice. It's a great example. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure they could have got a lot of different quarterbacks, but Tony Rice had, he was a great option guy. Like, he could throw the ball a little bit, but he can move around. And I don't know if that was the case, if it was 5 years ago that they would have went and got a Tony Rice type of player.
Right. And I will say this, like, having watched this, I've watched this game so many times, and then rewatching it to get ready for this episode, I will give Brent Musburger this. It was a hype atmosphere. South Bend, I mean, that was a few weeks ago. Ohio State came in, and that was a pretty hype atmosphere this year. Too. That was fun. Like, Ohio State coming in 2023 was, like, really fun. And, you and I were texting. But, like, anybody with a pulse, if you go on YouTube, you can rewatch, 88, Miami at Notre Dame, and it's a hype. It's a show. It's a heavyweight matchup. And, like, you could feel the build-up for CBS Sports was there. So I'll give it that. Like, I will say it was pretty good. But one thing that does add to it, though, is also in the pregame, and Notre Dame has that one tunnel. Everyone goes to that one tunnel. Miami's trying to go back into the locker room, and there comes this big scuffle. And there's different, like, rumors on who started it. I've heard more people say that the Irish started it. Miami has to get through, and Notre Dame plays the enemy, like, or the victim. I'm sorry, like, where they're like, they were trying to run through us. It's like they had to get you're in the way. They have to get that way. But a big scuffle starts and some haymakers are being thrown, and that kind of sets up what's going to happen in this game, in my opinion.
It does, and we touched on it at the beginning. Like this has been brewing since '85, right? Like since that final game where Miami wins 58-7. It's been since that day, like that these guys had that chip on their shoulder. That these guys wanted to get back. You hear guys saying that we're going to see you again. Like you know what I mean. You got the Digger Phelps story that he comes and he blows Miami out the following season, and in college basketball, which is such BS. Like, you know what I mean? Like, who cares about that? Like, Notre Dame is a basketball school too, but they're a football program. Like, so I just thought that was funny. But that chip has been on their shoulders for 3 years, man. And you knew when Miami coming into South Bend, they were going to try to flex a little bit. They were going to try to show them that they were not the pushovers from '85, that this was a different thing. So I'm not surprised that happened, and I'm not surprised that most of the information that you get or you see or you read, it's saying that the Notre Dame program, them guys were kind of like instigating a little bit of it because it makes sense to me because they were trying to show like, look, we're not some chumps. So,
right,
which is cool. Like I'm not saying go fighting and stuff like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But then don't play the victim. That's the part where you lose.
Yeah, and I think that's where it becomes that too. I'll be honest. I never loved Miami. I was never like, and Miami had a second run in the early 2000s of dominance. I didn't love that team. I do have more of an understanding. And when you get older, you start to see how storylines and narratives are there or hyped up even or changed or twisted. And guess what? I don't have beef with Notre Dame players, to be quite honest. On this 88 team, I had no beef with Tony Rice or Chris Zordich or,
Tim Brown.
Rocket. Yeah, right. Rocket, Ricky Waters, Tim Brown, all those guys. But it becomes their fans, the narrative, the establishment, the media. That's where it becomes frustrating. Hey, this is football. It's intense. It's physical. It's guys are going to get after it. So, yeah, you're going to have a pregame scuffle every now and again. Hey, break it up, move on. But then don't make it seem like we were defending our honor. No, you weren't doing any of that. It was just, hey, it's two teams, a big game. It's a rivalry at this point. It happens. Let's move on. But then when you start saying all this other stuff and then they say that's what did it for them, when Lou Holtz, we're going to play any undisciplined, any kind of that stuff. You're off this team. If you want to fight in the parking lot, all that stuff, but shave Jimmy Johnson's ass for me. I'm like, golly, I've heard that story so many times.
Yeah. And
I get annoyed every time because it's like, and that's where we won the game. I'm like, come on now.
Right. Oh, and look, I would rather them say like we were not going to let them come in here and push us around. I get it. Like I don't blame you. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, I salute you because they were the national champs and you kind of like stood up to that because Miami is known for like that pregame stuff and like trying to like intimidate teams and things like that. And that was years before that, So I definitely get that, man. But again, like if that's the card you're going to play, then all right, like play it all the way. You know what I mean? Like and don't kind of like back out at the end when it comes to like owning up to it. That's what, again, like you lose me, you lose a lot of people. And then that's where it almost plays into like that Notre Dame, like preppy, like somebody called like we're walking around in suitcases and things like that. Like it kind of plays into that mindset of like, we're better than you type of stuff. So that always bothered me, man, for years. Like that incident. Cause again, I get it, but like speak on it the way you were speaking on it that day.
And they definitely play into that, and they still do. And I think that's what's annoying, which is, one thing, and just to compare it, Bobby Bowden, the legendary coach, loved him. Rest in peace, died, recently. Coached Florida State, and he was a man of God. And I'll say it. One thing I liked is when you saw players, the things looking back on Bobby Bowden, and Bobby Bowden would pray, and he was like that, and players would pray, and if they lost, they would come back and be like, what's wrong? We worked hard, we prayed about it, and Bobby Bowden would be like, you think the other team didn't pray too?
Yeah.
You think God's not looking out for the other team? Like, he's like, I pray that everyone does their best and no one gets hurt or seriously hurt. But other than that, no, like, you, God's not a genie. And I think that's what it comes down to is if Notre Dame wins, it's like all is right with the world.
Yeah.
God is saying, yes, I am anointing.
Touchdown, Jesus.
Yeah, and it's like, come on, because they are saying we're better than you. Everything about Notre Dame football says we are better than you, but not just better football players. I could respect that even. We're better human beings, and that's a problem.
That's a big problem. Big problem, and that's why you got these schools like Miami, like, that come in there and want to beat the shit out of them. You know what I mean? Because, again, like, it's like that anti-establishment. You're always going to have that. You know what I mean? And these programs that a lot of these kids, let's be honest, like come from like the inner city and they don't live like that. And look, I'm not knocking people for being successful and sending their kids to great schools. That's the American dream, I guess, right? And but a lot of people don't live that dream, right? And when you shove that dream into somebody's face and like stick your nose, like it's just you're going to get 58-7, in 1985. So, again, this has been boiling, and this was a crazy atmosphere, man. These are the type of games that I wish I could just go back to and just be there.
Absolutely, no, it would have. And I'm with you. It would have been. It's one that I didn't have on my radar. It's like, ooh, games I wish I could have been there. I knew it was a great game and all that, but getting ready for this episode, I'm like, man, I kind of.
Yeah.
I would have enjoyed being in South Bend for this one. One thing I'll say, though, is we've given a lot of props to Jimmy Johnson on other episode too, and this one. But, man, when I watched this, I know we're going to look at the fourth quarter, but the way Miami came out and played, it was different than any other Miami team I saw under him. And even once he got good with the Cowboys in Dallas, like there was almost like the energy level. I know Notre Dame was hyped, chip on the shoulder. Miami didn't have that energy level.
Yeah.
And Miami also didn't seem like they just were not prepared, which isn't what Jimmy Johnson really, his teams were built on that. But they weren't prepared to get that punch in the mouth, as Jimmy Johnson would always say.
Yeah, I always feel like his teams are always like the aggressor. Like,
right.
Not in this game. I felt like Notre Dame came out and they were a more aggressive team, and you can see, we'll see it, man, like during the game. Like you can see like just the attitude they had and the excitement that they had. And normally that's coming from that Miami squad or that Miami sideline, and it you can tell like right away like what kind of game this was going to be. And it was just like, man, like this is Miami intimidated a little bit, like, and I get if that's the case, I get it, because you're at Notre Dame, this place is going crazy, this is a really good team. This might be one of Jimmy Johnson's like moments, you know what I mean? Like, and that's fine. We all get those, so
and one thing else about Jimmy is he likes to play. I don't live in the past, but a lot of times when you talk about Jimmy's like misgivings, he does. There's always a but to a lot of his stuff. I will say that about Jimmy, but I honestly just when I watch it, and it shows to me how talented Miami is, because I think if they weren't that talented, another team would have gotten smoked by Notre Dame. Like Absolutely. The game would have been over going into the third quarter. It would have been done. But and that's why I don't know if it was like, I can't believe that they overlooked them with all the hype. Like, but did they underestimate them, or were they intimidated? That's what I go back and forth on, because it's just watching the Jimmy Johnson era Hurricanes, especially from 86 to 88. This is not the same kind of football team.
I mean, you can see it in game one of the season where, Florida State was ranked number 1. Obviously, Miami took offense to that, coming off a national championship, and they destroyed Florida State 31-0. Like, and you always hear that again about these Miami teams, like, oh, you want to celebrate something when you're playing us, we're going to ruin it for you. You know what I mean? Like, and they're always find like that one thing to motivate them. I would think going into Notre Dame is all the motivation you need, especially you know, all this Catholics versus convict stuff and all that, like, and it just didn't look like they had that energy coming out of the gates. I mean, the second quarter they put up 21 points, but still, like, I just think if they come out like that, that game might have been over in the first quarter. But they didn't, and they just gave Notre Dame even more like confidence that they could play with Miami.
Right. Well, because Notre Dame comes out on fire. So
Right.
that first half,
Right.
And they said it, they were not prepared. Steve Walsh was the quarterback for Miami. And I think that's what got me is that Testaverde was the quarterback before.
Right.
And in that Fiesta Bowl in 86 against Penn State, there's a lot of turnovers by Miami. But Testaverde could also air it out.
Yeah.
You know, where Steve Walsh, to me, that was him. He was a smart quarterback. He was a game manager. And they said that they thought, hey, Notre Dame traditionally were not speed guys like you brought up, but their front seven had speed and were getting after Steve Walsh. And you saw under a lot of pressure all day, Steve Walsh was.
Yeah.
But I was just like looking at him like, man, he was sloppy with that football. And not all turnovers were him, but he was sloppy.
Right. He doesn't have that. He didn't have that NFL arm. He played in the NFL. He played for a while. You know, but I agree. I mean, and we all know with Testaverde, he was a turnover machine, but he had all the attributes, right, that you want in the NFL quarterback. You see how high he went in the draft. So, you know, he had the size, he had the arm strength. Like, I was surprised too. Like, looking back, like, yeah, they had Testaverde on that team, and I was like, why did Walsh start? Like, I don't know, but the Jimmy Johnson loved it because he went to Dallas too. Like, you know, and yeah, so I agree. I agree with that point.
But it's just that's what really got Miami, I feel like, not energy level in the turnovers. They wound up having 7 for the game.
Yeah, you ain't winning too many games.
No,
that.
7 turnovers. But, you know, they had a good amount in the first half that really got them, and including that pick six that put Notre Dame up 21-7 at one point in the first half. And Miami had to play from behind this entire game. And I think that's what a big key was too. Like you said, if they come out with that energy and at least it's kind of like even, like, okay, then
right.
I think they would have taken it over in that fourth quarter. Because Miami shows, even in this game, that they're a fourth quarter team. But the fact that they were always having to play from behind and crawling their way back, which they did multiple times, but I think that takes a toll on you. Especially when you're on a 36-game regular season win streak too.
Yeah, you can't consistently play like that. Like I agree. Like it's gonna wear you down eventually. You know what I mean? And I just think, you know, Walsh is not the type of quarterback wasn't the type of quarterback that can consistently do that. And again, I think Testaverde was. I think Bernie Kosar was. You know, but I think Steve Walsh was more of like, he had a ton of talent around him, you know, and he just kind of like rode that wave. But I'm not saying he was a scrub, but compared to like some of these other Miami quarterbacks, you're not winning with Steve Walsh trying to bring you back from a 21-7, you know, score or like 35-10. Like he's not that guy.
Yeah, he was game manager there.
Yeah,
but we look at it, despite all the turnovers, the fake punt that didn't work, all those things, you know, it's 20. Miami does tie it up 21-21 at halftime. Notre Dame then winds up coming in the third and getting, 10 points in the third, and they're up 31-21 going into the fourth quarter. So we're gonna break down this fourth quarter for everyone here. We're gonna do our rewatch.
Yeah.
And we're going to look at to see this infamous fourth quarter. And there's a lot of controversial plays that we're going to look at. And you know what? Should Miami be back-to-back national champions? Or did Notre Dame really win this game? Or did Jimmy Johnson make a little mistake here at the final seconds here that, do you agree with this decision or not? So there's a very infamous and legendary fourth quarter we're going to look at here.
Absolutely. And I know my answer to that already. So let's do it.
Yeah, 31-21.
Brett Musburger sounds good though here, man.
He does.
I'll give him that.
You know what though is funny? It's just weird because I'm so used to NBC Sports for Notre
Yeah,
Dame games, so to see a CBS thing throws me off. But I really do think this game led to that big contract. I honestly do.
yeah. I mean, because I'm sure this was a. I'm curious to know like what the numbers were with you know what I mean, like the
The
viewing and all the
ratings,
like ratings and stuff. This had to be a huge game.
yeah. You know it's big if Brent's doing it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And he's talking about what happened in Ann Arbor
yeah,
earlier. This game almost doesn't really I mean, it happens, but the hype's not there. Michigan had Miami up against the ropes. In deep into the fourth quarter, Miami had a miraculous comeback in Ann
yeah.
Arbor to stay undefeated, stay number one. Or otherwise, this game, Miami loses that number one ranking, and it's not the same kind of
Right,
effect,
right.
nationally. So Miami knows about coming back in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, because even if they lose that game, they're at Michigan. They're probably still the top 10 team coming into this
Yeah.
game. But still, they're not. Yeah, they're not the defending champs, number one ranked. That's bigger. Look at the wide receivers, man. 3-point stance. That's
Mm.
great.
Yeah.
Oof. Cleveland Gary. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, the 30 doc, him talking about Yale recruited him and Ivy League schools wanting him, and he decided he wanted to go to the best football school. He goes to Miami. So when you're calling these guys convicts,
Right.
these guys, you have people like Cleveland Gary, Ivy League schools are recruiting you.
Yeah. Damn, they were packing that box, man. Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Ooh, he got stuck. Rudy. Man, like, look at that. Look at student body, like, literally on the field, man.
Yeah, they're right there. And it's Barry Alvarez, future Wisconsin coach. He's the D coordinator for Lou Holtz at this time for Notre Dame. And I'll be honest, I got to say, until the documentary, I did not know that
I didn't know that
Alvarez
either.
was under Lou Holtz.
Yeah,
When
I didn't
that
know
doc
that either.
came out, I was like, wow.
Yeah, because I was focusing on like this Miami coaching staff, which is a
Right.
great coaching staff. You got obviously Jimmy Johnson, Dave Wanstead, Butch Davis. Like, you got a bunch of coaches there who.
Dave Campo was
Yeah,
there.
Dave Campo, coached in the NFL, successfully coached in the NFL too. But Barry Alvarez was a great college football coach.
Mm-hmm. Great success with Wisconsin.
Yeah.
All those teams. So that was huge. And he had them ready. You got to give him props. The game plan he had for this was probably the key, honestly. What he did and how he confused Steve Walsh in this Miami offense. So props to Barry Alvarez.
Yeah, because he was bringing heat, man. You can look at him now, like even though they didn't blitz here, but he had guys up in the line of scrimmage. Like, he was really confusing Walsh.
It's always interesting, and they kind of go into it a little bit in the doc, but the history between Jimmy Johnson and Lou Holtz, and there's some bad blood. I mean, maybe they might act all okay now and be like it's in the past a little bit, but I think it's still there, honestly. Where Jose, you mentioned Jimmy Johnson played at Arkansas. That's where he met Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
They won a national title under Frank Broyles in '64. Then Jimmy becomes an assistant coach, D coordinator for the Razorbacks. He's an alumni, knows Frank Broyles. They have a good relationship. Frank Broyles is going to retire, and everyone thinks Jimmy's the guy. It's a foregone conclusion.
They put his nameplate.
They put his nameplate. They put his nameplate there, and then all of a sudden, who does Frank Broyles made the decision because he's AD of Arkansas, and he hires Lou Holtz.
Yep.
And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Lou Holtz tried to keep Jimmy Johnson, and he was like, "I'm good, man. Like I can't." So I respect Jimmy for that.
I can't do it. Oh yeah. And that kind of plays into this game here, where there's also that
Oof.
Rocket gets hit there, but that Jimmy wants to stick it to Lou Holtz. He has a good memory of that too,
Oh yeah.
and he's beaten in the past couple of years, but he wants to show people in Arkansas, there's a
Yes.
message there.
Absolutely.
You hired the wrong guy.
Rocket Ishmael. Oof.
Talk about a name. Talk about just so much overhyped for a player.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, for years after this Notre Dame run, you hear about Rocket Ishmael, Rocket Ishmael, Rocket Ishmael. And I'm like, for a guy who's in the Canadian Football League and then
Yes.
ain't doing nothing with the Cowboys and Dallas, is all this hype based on this Notre Dame lore?
Yeah. Even his brother got hype.
Yep.
He was
very true. He was not good either.
What is it, Quadri Ishmael? Something like that?
Yeah, Quadri Ishmael.
The missile.
It was.
Sheesh.
And he was fast. I'm not going to take anything away from him.
They were both fast. Yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean, it's like...
And Rocket had his moments, man, in Notre Dame.
He's a great returner.
Yeah.
But that's, like, it to me.
Yes.
Like, he could return. But, like, you see, like, he's playing with Ricky Waters. And the Notre Dame hype from Ricky Waters to Rocket Ishmael is not even close.
Nope.
Rocket got way more hype than Ricky. Ricky Waters was a way better football player.
And that, translated to the NFL, right? And we saw what happened with their careers in the NFL. Ricky Waters, potential Hall of Fame career. And I don't remember one highlight from Rocket Ishmael in the NFL.
No, I remember one. I think.
Yeah, one punt return or something like that, right?
I remember that it was like toward the end of like the triplets in Dallas. I think Michael Irvin might have got hurt, but like Dallas was at Washington and they were down by a lot and they came back and won, and Aikman hit like Rocket for like a few. So I feel like Dion was out and I think Michael Irvin might have got hurt or something, but they hit Rock and they came back and won that game. I do remember that. That like the last like hurrah, like one of that like the triplets with Dallas. So I remember that. So that's really it, honestly.
Yeah. Tony Rice, man, he got that like unorthodox release, but he's putting it right there.
Well, they said about him throwing darts.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, does that really work?
Yeah, I was trying to think about that too. I guess like it's more of like a throwing motion.
But do you hear people really talk about that?
No, I've never heard that.
Yeah, like,
until
hey, get better, work on your motion, throw darts, like, because I'm like, I don't know if did that really. I'm like, that really help? And if it helped him, that's cool. It worked for him. But I'm like, does that shit work?
I think that's what I'm thinking. You would have heard a lot more. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
We both follow a lot where I'm like, I've never heard anyone talk about throwing darts helps you to be a better, like, more accurate passer,
that was some
better release.
Drunk college dorm stuff. That's all that was. They just wanted him to keep coming back, and he was like, "All right."
Well, because it's weird. You hear like there's like dorm mates saying it, and then you hear like Lou Holtz and the coach. We told him to throw dart, and I'm like, I don't understand it. Even how he drops back though is really weird. Tony Rice.
Yeah. I mean, because he's not. Well, he wasn't. Like coming out of high school, he was a great like option quarterback, and I'm sure for him to kind of like develop like this, it was tough. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, he's got a funky release, but he gets it there though. Damn. He's a freshman, 5'10", 175.
No, I knew people who were from Wilkes-Barre, and they talked about him and Bob Sura. Remember Bobby Sura?
Yeah, I mean,
basketball player for Florida State.
Iverson used to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Eesh.
What do you think it was? Well, how come it was just sloppy? I mean, it was great. It's a great game, but a lot of sloppiness out here.
I mean, I think like at this point, I think nerves should be out of there. You know what I mean? Like This is the fourth quarter, man. Close game still, and I just think maybe I don't know. I think two teams just trying to do a little too much.
Hmm.
Yeah, they coming for this point. Hmm. Man, that's one thing I would never do is return punts.
Nah, it's you take a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah,
You just do. Nah, it's a 7 point game though, 31-24 Notre Dame in the fourth. It's, Steve Walsh are in the end of the fourth. He's got 3 interceptions.
yeah, yeah. They're talking about his accuracy. Yeah, he's accurate from both sides of the ball.
Yeah, he's giving it to
For him, those are pretty good passing statistics, though. Other than obviously the interceptions. I mean, they're out. They had over 400 yards coming into the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So they I mean, Miami's moving the ball.
No, it's reminiscent of the '86 Fiesta Bowl where they're getting yards. It's these turnovers. These turnovers are costly, and
Yeah,
it's really the big difference in the game.
and what I give Barry Alvarez credit in Notre Dame that they took away like that big play. Like you saw Cleveland Gary had 10 receptions. What does that mean? They were just dinking and dunking down the field. Like they're not letting Hill get past them. Like you know what I mean? Like they're not letting that happen.
Well, let me ask you this too, because Notre Dame obviously they with no spoilers, 35 years, so people know that they win the game and they go on to win a national title. When you look back on, and people call us a great like college football team, '88 Fighting Irish. But let me ask you something that I'm like I had to check myself on. Am I doing this right? When you look at college football or college basketball, when you look at a great team, how much of it like do you go by like I know it's partially like their record and where they finish, but do you look at like how many great pros they have on their team?
I do. I do. Like
And is that wrong though? Because I mean, like they're not. There's about like what they did in college, but I'm always doing that when I'm like, oh, who's the all-time great college football or college basketball team? I'm like, how many big names that they wind up being great players were on this team? Like,
yeah, I definitely do that, and I think that is wrong. You know what I mean? Like, because you're right. Like, this is about. I mean, they went undefeated, and we talked about earlier that schedule was brutal. You know, they played a lot of really good teams on the road. Like, so yeah, yeah. I mean, I do that. I'll be honest. Like, I'm not even going to like act like I don't
no,
do
I
that.
do
Like,
it too.
yeah, like that's probably, yeah, they go undefeated. I look at like who they played, where like tough games on the road, things like that, and then the next thing I look at is pros, like you know what I mean. And if I see a couple names there or a lot of names there, I'm like, yeah, all right, this was a great team. But yeah, that's definitely I don't think it's the right way to look at it because this team was a really good team. I'm one like yeah they went undefeated and things like that, but I didn't consider this team like a great team. You know what I mean? Like yeah, I thought they were a really good team, but I didn't never looked at this Notre Dame team as a great team.
I looked at future Notre Dame teams under Lou Holtz because they
Yes.
had more names.
Right.
So I would look at them like, oh, that's a great team. Like that's a team. That team, how could that team didn't win a title? Like because it was bigger, and I'm like, that probably is wrong.
It's a terrible throw, but
You got Andre Brown with a big catch there. I think Randall Thrill Hill. I think he's a freshman.
Yep.
He's out there though.
They were right there next to each other. That's why it was just like,
Somebody go get it.
yeah,
I just think what is Jimmy Johnson's legacy changed? If he let's say all right, they lost the Fiesta Bowl, but if they go back to back 87, 88, I think he's leaving no matter what happens.
yeah,
He was tired of the crap with Miami within his own school. So I think no matter even if he wins, he's going to Dallas. But then if he has back to back titles in college, back to back Super Bowls in Dallas, Do you think he's elevated in our minds even more, or is he pretty much where he's at now?
I think for me, he's where he's at. Like I just think. I mean, yeah, if he back to back national champs, like I don't. He's elevated for me in college football for sure. Like I'm considering. I already consider him one of the best. Damn, look at that. They're like right on the field.
They are. It's just crazy. I'm like,
Holy shit. Like, but yeah, to your point, like I think I elevate him in college football for sure. Look at that, dude. Like, it's like a golf tournament.
well,
Because
look,
they're all fans. Like,
yeah, he's a couple steps out of the back of the end zone. People got to move out the way. Like fans have to move out the way. Like it's right there. That's
Todd
a
Light played.
future
Yeah,
Pro Bowler, Todd Light, Notre Dame.
I mean Pat Terrell played in the NFL for a long time. I
Mm-hmm.
remember he played in Carolina. And no headsets.
Jimmy's he's like,
Yeah.
which is also why though I'm kind of surprised. And I know they're young kids and they won a lot of games, so you do tire out. You can only stay hyped with so long, but you had to know officiating is not going to be on your side
Yeah.
going into this game. Like,
Yeah.
and knowing how smart Jimmy is and was, here's a
Ooh.
controversial play right here.
Yeah. And this is where like instant replay would have changed a lot of these great games. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these outcomes.
So it's that pass Steve Walsh to Cleveland Gary, and they're down 7.
Yeah.
And they say that he caught it and fumbled the ball. He was reaching forward. What do you think, Jose? Do you think this was the right call or what? I never got the replay here, but
yeah, no, I don't think so, man. I think he was down. Like,
is it a catch? You think he did catch it, right?
yeah, I think it's a catch. Yeah, he took a couple steps and he made a football move. You know what I mean? Like he turned upfield.
Because some say maybe it could be incomplete. Like you've heard people say that.
Yeah.
I think it is a catch too.
Yeah, right there, 1-2, and he's turning upfield. And
remember, in college, you just got to be once you hit the ground, you're done.
Yeah,
it's
you're
not
down.
even you got to be touched.
I think it's wide open. Right, he's going absolutely crazy on the sidelines right now.
Jimmy's going nuts.
Yeah. He was wide open. Why would you? I don't know. Bring it back.
I don't know. Rocket's not. I feel like he's a freshman here, so he's not rocket yet in people's minds, but he's soon to be after this.
Yeah,
man, I'm just telling you, man. Talk about it. And I'll be real. This is just. It was just getting ready for this episode, but I'm like, man, so many people are living off of. I mean, it's this season. Yeah. So I don't want to knock them because they completed the journey because they could have lost one of these other games and not been national champs. But it's this game, they're really living off of it. Like I think Rocket is a big name. I think Lou Holtz.
Yeah.
Like they are living off this
forever.
Game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because he don't win. There's no other titles. Like it's this '88 one.
Ooh. Wow. Yeah, he's going ballistic, and I don't blame him, man.
That's supposed to be first and goal.
Yeah.
Instead now it's a turnover, and it's back to Notre Dame here, and they're down 7. But I think and that's where I'm just like surprised. It's not the way. Even outside the turnover, it's just not a way a Jimmy Johnson team that I would watch at Miami. Like their energy was just down.
Yeah, even defensively, like right now, like they would. So they were trying to make a play. Yeah, exactly. This is like those typical turnover right here, something like that, or 3 now, great punt return. Look at that. Oh man, that they barely got him.
Mm-hmm. You see how much room he had? Oh, he had big open space.
Yeah, that I couldn't see who it was, but got him right in the ankle, man. Tripped him up. Was that Tony Brooks?
Let me see.
Right there.
Right?
Boop. That little. Oh my God. He would have got another 10, 15 yards. That's got to be. I'm trying to think. Like,
Yeah, it's Tony Brooks.
he played in the NFL.
Played for the Birds.
Yeah.
Played for the Eagles. In Notre Dame, they're down a couple. I think both guards for the O-line are out. One of them being, remember, Tim Grunhard,
Okay.
who wound up playing in the NFL for the Chiefs all those years.
Yeah, he was good.
He was really good. He's on this '88 title team, Notre Dame, but he was out. So Notre Dame putting this up with missing 2 of their starting offensive linemen too.
Notre Dame played well. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'll give them that this game. And again, Miami's, it took 7 turnovers and a controversial play to beat Miami. I think that also shows you, like, even if you cut those turnovers in half, you win this game.
Miami's a better team, not this day,
right?
But Miami's a better team. And no knock on Notre Dame. I know it sounds like we're bashing Notre Dame. I don't think we're bashing. I think we're just keeping it real.
Yeah,
but
there's a difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. But I think if you win by 1 point, look at it. Look, 458 offense for Miami, 352 for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
If you get 7 turnovers and you win by 1 point, it wins a win, but it's still like, ooh, like
yeah. Some defensive tackles making things happen in there. But I agree. Yeah, it's again like even if you have 4 turnovers, you win this game. You know what I mean? Like, and that's crazy to think about. Look at that. Oh man. Damn, Russell Maryland and Cortez Kennedy. Coming on late.
Jeez. That's a good punt for.
That was a great punt. Yeah.
He was a spectator just 2 seconds earlier. I don't know what my man was thinking.
Yeah, you should be ready to go out there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brent's all excited, man.
Brent, if you watch like a Dan Patrick, it's like from 2017. Brent Musburger's still hype. Oh, I wish I was back at doing that game again. You are looking live. He's just like hyped for it. I'm like, all right, Brent. Like he says, one of the most hyped sporting events he's been to. Reggie Ho. Good 30 for 30 short on Reggie Ho.
Yeah.
The kicker for Notre Dame.
Got a nice GPA, 3.7.
He becomes a doctor. He works at UPenn in Philly.
Look at that. Jimmy Johnson still on the sidelines yelling at these referees. That referee took 5 years to get to him.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy's right, though.
Yeah. Absolutely. Late hit.
All right, good.
Yeah, that's extremely late hit.
Fair about to say, if they don't give him that, then it's really bad. Chris Zordich, I tell you what, he was a good D tackle, really good.
Yeah, he played a while
in the NFL. Yeah. But he's from Chicago, and I think he's one of the guys they talk about who was like had that like Miami kind of attitude that they brought in there. Lou Holtz, he's got good hard work ethic and plays the game hard. We need him for the Irish. Like that's one of them guys. It's like, no, you
Yeah,
need some roughneck dudes. That's what you're talking
right.
about.
And he was that. He was definitely that. But yeah, with all that extra stuff, just say he's good. Like,
Yeah. Well, because you gotta have an excuse because then you're still holier than thou, even though
oh,
you're getting the guys that you're coming after.
right, right. Because now at this point, you he's been there what 2 years.
Lou Holtz.
Lou Holtz. Yeah. So
This is his third year.
yeah.
Yep.
So he's recruiting now at this point. And again, this isn't like you're talking mid '80s, late '80s, and Notre Dame's still the one of the biggest names in college football. So you can go in there and get a lot of kids like from everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know who got the game ball from Notre Dame, but to me, Barry Alvarez,
Yeah, yeah,
he deserved it because he dialed up all the right stuff, and they
yeah.
needed every one of those plays to win this game.
Oof.
Bernard.
And they got the neck roll going. That always just makes you look like a good linebacker.
Right. It just makes you look bigger and more. That neck roll, something about it. See that linebacker, that neck, or like that fullback with it. You're just like, there
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah.
There he is. Tough dude.
Yeah, I want my DBs with dreads. I want my linebackers with neck rolls. Trying to think what else. I can't think of anything else. Stereotyping positions.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to see any of the t-shirts.
I feel like you see that when the game's over, like, or when that, you start seeing them. Let's look at it again, though.
Yeah,
Just
about
Walsh
time they
to,
replay this thing, man. It's only been in a half a quarter. So he's got 2 feet. He turns up. Oh man, ground
you
calls
could
that.
make the
Might be a
case it's a touchdown, honestly, yeah. Which that changes this game completely.
Yeah.
Like, does Jimmy Johnson do what he does at the end of the game? Then, if he can tie it up with 4 minutes left, it's just it's just totally different. But it's either first and goal or a touchdown. Like that's
Yeah, so right now
you're wrong, Pat Hayden.
Right, 3 minutes left. Fourth quarter. Oof, man. He went nowhere.
And good old Bill Hawkins coming in there.
Ha,
Ooh.
good call, Brett.
Brent, little foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Which is so weird. I don't know the year. I probably can look it up, but whatever. When overtime came into play, but there's still no overtime in college football at this point.
Yeah,
in 1988.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
which because it leads to what's going to happen at the end of the game, like that question. But it's
oof. I don't know how he fumbled that. Oh, he did fumble that. Okay, that Mike Shannon, right?
Randy Shannon.
Future head coach
of Miami, yep. But this is huge here. This is the energy that Miami did not have throughout. But I think, we saw it when we start this clip for the fourth quarter. They were holding up that fourth quarter sign. This is a fourth quarter football team.
Yeah.
And they're showing it here. Because this defense, they were looking tired earlier. But that's championship level football. They're pushing through. That's a big turnover. Right there in Notre Dame territory, too.
Yeah. I mean, they forced them, to like that 3 and out earlier, previous possession. So, yeah, they're doing their job for sure. This offense keeps turning the ball over, though. No matter.
Mm.
So you got 1:52 left in the game. Clock is running. Miami with 3 timeouts. Yeah.
You have a pick 6 that happened.
Yeah.
You have all those other turnovers. the fact that they only have 31 points is, that's really like 24 points you gave up. All those turnovers, that's impressive. Ooh, what a hit on Cleveland. Yeah. Cleveland Garrett got popped there.
Yeah. So he hung him out to dry on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And this ain't 2023. They're going to try and knock your head off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Concussion protocol be damned.
Yeah. I'm surprised Notre Dame's not calling timeouts here.
The defense has been playing well. So I think it's him trusting in his D at this point.
And it's 3rd and 7. Minute to go. Crowd's going crazy. Crowd's going nuts, man. I mean, they're literally on the field.
Yeah.
That should have been picked.
That should have been picked. I don't know how it wasn't. That was a dangerous pass by Steve Walsh right there.
Yeah, we have 4 guys around.
Yeah. But you know what, though? You mentioned earlier, this does have the Bush push that SC Notre Dame. Like, watching this, like, and the feel, it has that kind of feel.
Yeah.
Like, it does have a feel like that.
Oof. 4 guys right there.
Yeah, he's very lucky that game. I mean, that ball wasn't intercepted right there.
Got a bunch of neck rolls out there.
Mm-hmm. That was a trend for a while.
Yeah. Damn. I would love to go like that college. Dang, look at Byron Alvarez, a hair.
Hair with the shades and everything.
I would love to go to like a big college game like this, though, man. That's definitely on the bucket list.
Oh, it'd be awesome.
I know this fight song from so many times I've watched this team on TV. And Rudy. I watched Rudy like 100 times.
Rudy's great, though.
Yeah.
I love Rudy. I remember in COVID, Rich Eisen had the guy. I think the guy who did Rudy also did Hoosiers, and I think Rudy's way better than Hoosiers.
Yeah.
And Rich Eisen loved Hoosiers more, and he was upset because the guy was like, a lot of stuff at Hoosiers wasn't like real, and like Gene Hackman was miserable. He wanted to like slam on Rudy because he's a Michigan guy, but Rudy's great though, man. I watch Rudy all the time. Here we go, 4th down though.
Look at that! Dropped everybody back. Touchdown.
Or is it? We know what's called.
Yeah.
But
I don't know how this guy was so open. That was great. Not great defense, but like he had everybody up in the line scrimmage, and it was just rush 3. That was nice. But then they left this dude wide open in the corner.
Well, and that's his go-to guy. He's been going, his go-to number 1 receiver. He's been going. Let's look at this play. Because the documentary showed. Let's see. Is this really a catch?
And 2 refs, 1 ref looking right at it. He doesn't even have the ball. Get enough.
It's called a touchdown, but it looks like it should not have been. And that was 4th and 7.
Yeah.
So
he would have went in. He was wide open. Wow.
So in reality, this game should be 31-31 though.
Yeah.
1 touchdown, gets taken away. Ball don't lie, as Rasheed Wallace says. So it should have been tied, but now they called the Andre Brown touchdown catch. Got about 45 seconds left. And here, like I said, that's why, Brent Musburger foreshadowed it. I brought it up, Jose. What do you think? 31-30, 45 seconds left. The defense is – I wasn't sure, but because I'm like, do you let the defense – are you worried about them? They're playing strong. What do you think about the decision to go for 2? Do you agree with it?
Yeah, I'm going for 2. Like, I'm trying to get out of here with this win. We played like shit the entire game. If we can steal this one, yeah, we're winning. We're winning the national championship.
But you win it with a tie. You're number 1 in Notre Dame. You still get it with a tie too, though.
No,
So just throw it out there to you.
I'm going for 2.
So, Tom Osborne did it 5 years earlier.
Yeah. It's all right. They play aggressive, you lose aggressive, man. Like Miami's known for that. Like I mean, we all know
There's
that.
some of the shirts there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
Miami's an aggressive team, man, and they lose like that. That's fine. Like to come out of there, if they could have hit this 2-point conversion or got out of there with a win, the way they played, man, that would have been great for them.
I just think, especially, they heard all the noise back then, Miami. You don't want to backdoor your way into a national title. And I think you want to compete,
Right.
You want to go out there and compete. So I for a little while, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, man, kick the extra point. But I do think you want to compete, and also, who knows? You saw what happened in the beginning of the year. You're defending national champs. You bring a lot of guys back, and Florida State's number 1. Who knows if you get a tie and something funky happens anyway?
Right.
Which is there's a history of that in college football, whether it's the AP poll,
Yep.
the BCS, the college football playoff. So I think you're right. It is the right move to go for 2.
They got 1 timeout. This is when onside kicks were you can get dumb things. Now I think it's like 1 for every 30 or something like that. Something crazy.
It doesn't happen. Yeah, it's tough. Man. They did get an onside kick though, that game in Michigan. That's a crazy comeback in itself.
Yeah, it was.
Like that was wild.
The key to this thing is be able to get 2 hops, not just the 1. You get the 2 hops.
But how you feel though? Lou Holtz, he is still kind of in the headlines here. He pissed off your coach Ryan Day.
Yeah, he did. Talking a lot of shit. Like,
were you with Ryan Day on that, or I thought Ryan Day should use his motivation, but he's taking it a little too personal here.
He did. He took it extremely personal, but
I'm like, Lou Holtz didn't say nothing wrong. Like, you have been against physical teams. Yeah, I'm not an Ohio State fan, but it's just the truth. Yeah. Ryan Day's like, we had 1 bad half of football. That's not true at all.
Nah, it's been it's been over the years.
Yeah.
Under with him as the head coach.
Yeah. So I'm like, I think Lou Holtz, because I rewatched that clip from Lou Holtz on the Pat McAfee show just to be like, did he take a cheap shot? Because Ryan Day was pissed after that game. I'm like, whoa here. But I'm like, Lou Holtz didn't really say anything bad. Nah. And if you want to use it for motivation for your squad, that's cool. But then to do all that, I was like,
as soon as they interviewed him at the end of the game, that was the first thing came out of his mouth. So he couldn't wait to talk about that. Yeah, I mean, Lou Holtz still it's on commercials. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you still see him around. And like you said, like this year this is 88. That was the last national championship. Like he went to he coached in Minnesota before he come into Notre Dame, and then he goes to it was South Carolina after this?
South Carolina, yeah.
They
had some good teams.
Yeah, they had a little bit of success, but he was in that SEC, and that was not
that's what started rising up, you know. He caught it right at that turn.
Yeah, that Tennessee, Florida,
it was them two. Era. Yeah, I remember Colin Cowherd. He made a good point. He was like, the SEC's different. He's like, back in the 90s, it was 2 coaches, Spurrier and Fulmer. He goes, now you get Saban and Meyer in her. Fulmer got fired. Like, they're like, we got to get you out of here. And I'm like, that's true. Like,
that is true.
That he, like, Spurrier now, and that's when Spurrier's in Carolina, he's middle of the pack now. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Florida, I mean, if Spurrier played the SEC when it was the SEC, like now, like, we'll be talking about the old ball coach like that? I don't think so.
I mean, some of them Florida teams were great. I mean, really good, though. Like,
They had that. Well, they had that funky. They would have gotten smashed though. I mean, it's different eras, I know, but that old like just pitch and putt kind of offense.
Defensively though, they had some players, man. Like I don't know. They
I
get
hated
dominated.
them teams.
So did I.
hate them.
So
teams.
did I.
I hated them teams.
Ike Hilliards and all them dudes. Like I'm like, man, these dudes are
because
that
was known that they ain't gonna make it in the pros.
Right. Yeah.
Like that.
All
that
those
was
quarterbacks, Jesse Palmer and what was the other dude?
You said.
Oh my god!
It wasn't. I'm blanking on that. Danny, was it?
Danny Cannell? No,
was he with Florida State?
Yeah, he was Florida State. This is one. What was the? I can't remember his name. Then he went to Heisman, or he was up for the Heisman or something. Like,
I think so.
But I just knew like those guys. You knew like they weren't even going to get drafted. Biggest
Danny
upset,
Warfel.
Danny Warfel. Yes.
You see him yell, "Shut up!" Lou Holtz. He thanks the fan right before. "Shut up!" yells.
They said this is the biggest upset in 30 years. I don't understand that. The spirit of Notre Dame, Deremy.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that, man.
Spirit. Well, he put that in his contract. Notre Dame job, and he's at Minnesota. He put that in there. If that job comes up, I can leave.
The spirit of Notre Dame, man. It's a beautiful thing.
Lived on for 35 years, man. 35 years.
I feel the spirit of Notre Dame right now after watching that game. Thank God.
I do.
I'm glad I watched that. That spirit is in me.
I'm a better man for watching Lou Holtz. Watching Lou Holtz. I'm just so much better. I tell you, it's a great game. And it's an infamous game.
It is.
And one of the great games in college football. But I do agree with what Jimmy Johnson said. If they make that call right for Cleveland Gary, he said Lou Holtz would have never won a national title.
Nope.
And that's a nice little, and that was in the documentary. So that's a nice little shot at being like, Arkansas, you still messed up.
Yep.
You know, which I love. That's Jimmy.
Yeah, no, and he's right though. You know, and he, I don't blame him for being upset. And I agree with Lou Holtz. Like he was like, look, I didn't hire Lou Holtz. Like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't tell him not to hire Jimmy Johnson. It's not Lou Holtz's fault. Like, you know, and he was a good coach. Like Lou Holtz was a good coach. I'm not saying he was Jimmy Johnson or any of these other great coaches, but he was a good coach. And
he's a great college football coach.
Right, yeah. He was a good builder of programs. Like, you know, you get a lot of those, you get some of those coaches where you just like you need somebody to like get your program running. He's one of those guys that you can get and they'll do that. And but yeah, like Jimmy's still probably upset about that to this day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't blame him. And any chance he gets those little digs in there. So I mean, Jimmy had a ton of success in Miami. I know after this season he goes to Dallas and you know builds that dynasty as well. But this was a great game, man. Great game. I'm glad you wanted to get this on here.
Yeah, I just think it's important. 35 years of it, and I think it's important because, like you said, and hopefully we have a future episode coming up about it. But have we really learned in these 35 years from this Catholics versus Convicts game? Also, man, what one win, depending on if you have, and I want to say it, if you have the right PR machine, if you have the right hype, what one win, what one season can do for a lifetime it's impressive. And I got to give these guys credit on that, man. They played a great game. It's a great season for Notre Dame and, you know, Lou Holtz and all, but I think it's time that, and it'll never happen. I doubt it'll happen, but I want to see if Notre Dame can come into the present, and maybe Marcus Freeman can kind of help that. We'll see. I don't know.
But I thought honestly with Brian Kelly, like I thought he was going to be able to do it. And he took off.
But you see, the first chance he got goes to LSU. He gets a Southern accent all of a sudden now.
That was great.
So that showed where he was at. He was like, bye-bye Notre Dame. I mean, I think they need to realize Urban Meyer. We talked about the Swamp Kings.
Yeah.
I don't think that gave a lot of hype in that doc about like everyone thought Urban and Notre Dame was a guarantee, and he said, "Hell no."
Yeah.
Florida, like he knew what he made the right call.
Right. I mean, because these schools, like, I mean, it's documented, it's well documented. Like, you go to these schools, like these particular schools, like the Notre Dames, the Alabamas now, like Michigan, like you see Jim Harbaugh, he was catching a lot of heat until he started beating Ohio State. Like,
Yeah.
you go to these schools and it's different, man. Like Texas, like it's a handful of these schools. You know what I mean? Like that you go to them and the pressure from day one. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think now is even worse because you can get this transfer. You can get guys from like these transfer portals, and if they're not happy, they can just leave. Like it's. I think it's even worse now, man. And you go to these high powered programs and you're not successful right away, like you're gonna it's just different coverage there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like everything is scrutinized and it's gotta be tough, man. Like, you know what I mean? So again, like I forgot about that Urban Meyer piece. Like, yeah, even a guy like that with that uh, cockiness, you know what I'm saying? Like and ability said, hell no, I'm good, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that goes to the players too. Like, if you're a great quarterback, I'm not gonna want to go to Notre Dame.
Well, let's be real. We saw, I know it might be a little off course here, but I think it connects to the bigger picture, in my opinion. We saw, if anyone has it, watched on Netflix the Swamp Kings docu-series that came out in August.
Yeah.
For the Untold series. You saw the kind of players who came through that Florida era under Urban Meyer. Those guys couldn't get accepted
Right.
under Notre Dame. They wouldn't allow those guys, even if they tried to hide and cover up stuff. It was hard to hide and cover it up at Florida. Under Notre Dame, and I think Urban Meyer knew that. The kind of guys he wanted to get, he could not get at Notre Dame. And until that changes, you will continue to be living in 1988 and Lou Holtz and this Convicts versus Catholics game is what you will be saying. That's what you'll continue to do.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not going to be able to get these great players. And even with this new, the transfer portal and these dudes getting paid now, like, I don't even think it's just going to be tough. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because again, like you're going to have a lot more options, or even if you go to Notre Dame and you're like, what? I'm out of here. Like, I got to go do all this. Like, I can't keep up with his classes and all that, man. Like, is it right? No, I don't think it's right, but players now have a lot more options, you know what I mean? To go to other places.
And I think the internet changed a lot of stuff in that we see here there's the big primetime game on CBS Sports. 2-3 years later, you get that NBC deal. That NBC deal was controversial for so long.
Yeah.
Because it was like, look, Notre Dame's getting a lot of that money from the gate. Let's be real about that, too.
Right.
Sneaky Notre Dame. I see you. And it's also, hey, you're on NBC, so everyone can see you. Well, now, guess what? Over these years, everyone can see everybody.
Right.
So that NBC deal, I remember like Mike Golick on Mike and Mike. We had the NBC deal, and I'm like, don't nobody give a damn about that deal now.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. You're on NBC getting your butt kicked, okay?
I don't even think people even realize it now. You know what I mean? Like,
it's not a big deal now.
They're just playing, and it's just like,
right.
They're always playing on NBC. Like, who cares? Like, you know what I mean?
Kids don't care about that.
Yeah. Right.
That's a good point. Kids don't for you, for my stuff, you're on NBC, you're on a network. Oh wow! Now it's like, what? You ain't online? Like,
yeah.
I can watch you on Twitter. What's up? Like, they don't care about that. NBC's done.
Yeah.
So it's like, but they're good. They're still holding on to that deal.
Yeah. I mean, hey, they're getting paid for it. You know what I mean? Like, and again, it's still, like you said, it's still a big deal to certain age demographics. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the older, like guys are older than us, to them, that's like a huge deal. thing still. And, like Notre Dame has an opportunity every week to be watched by a lot of people, and there's a lot of people who still are holding on to 88, holding on to win one for the Gipper, holding on to
Rudy.
Yeah, like so many, the Four Horsemen, like all those guys, man, like they're holding on to all of that, and that's unfortunately that's going to die out. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's getting close because it's like we're like getting to the older generation almost, and we don't give a shit about Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just my son doesn't care about like like Rockney and all that. Like, no, like he cares about who's on TV right now and who's playing in these playoffs, and Notre Dame's not.
If you graduated from Notre Dame in, let's say, the spring of after this semester in '88 or spring of '89, I mean, there's a good chance, like your kid, like your grandpa, you could be a grandpa, like 22, 30, like you're in your late 50s now.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, like that's how far removed this is. And like it's gonna, as time keeps going, it's going to get removed farther and farther. And that's why I brought up the Lou Holtz Ryan Day thing, because that's great. Lou Holtz, you want to honor. I think we wouldn't be doing this show if we didn't care about the past, right?
Right.
But it's like you have this big game. Ohio State's in town. 2 top 10 teams. Well, let's be real. One is a top 10 team. The other one, I'm like, why are they there?
Well, because
they're Notre Dame.
Right, exactly.
But what do? You parade out Lou Holtz at 86 to talk about, the spirit of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And we do, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, see, that's what you're still doing here. Like,
yeah.
And that's just where it's like, come on, man. And like, you're going to get upset when you see the Deion saying the Coach Primes running past you. They got The Rock and all that at theirs. You got Lou Holtz. Like, who am I going to go with here? Come on, man.
Yeah, like and look, I won't be doing this podcast if I didn't respect sports history. Like, and I know the same thing for you, Deremy. And if you're listening to this, like you respect sports history, I respect Notre Dame's history. Like, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like for the things they've done, like a long time ago, but they had a very successful program early on, right? Like they did a lot of stuff. I respect their history. Don't get me wrong. Like I love tradition. I absolutely love tradition, and that's why I love college football, because there's so much tradition that's involved. College sports in general, but particularly college football, there's so much like rich tradition, and Notre Dame's a part of that. Do not get me wrong, and I'm not here to like shit on Notre Dame so much, but like you gotta, like after a while, like you gotta let that go. You know what I'm saying? Like, and hopefully, again, because when Notre Dame's good, it's good for college football. You know what I mean? Like, so I want to see big games like we just saw with Ohio State and Notre Dame, earlier in the year. And I would like to see that, because it's a great place to watch a game. I had a buddy of mine go. I think he went to the Ohio State game and they played not too long ago before, or no, I don't know if it was Ohio State. They played somebody else. And he went and he was just like, man, it was a great experience. Like, and I would have a great experience if I did that too. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, but man, there's going to come a time when nobody gives a shit about that, and I think we're getting close to that. But they still had these couple games here this century that mean a lot to people. So,
yeah. Well, quickly they had the hype against Ohio State and they played them tough, and that went away this year. And then a few weeks later, what was the hype game against Duke football?
Right.
And I'm like, that's pretty much going to be that's where you're going.
That's the tier.
What's your big matchup?
Yeah.
Duke. We got Duke at home.
That's the tier.
That's where you're going to me soon.
Yeah.
We got Duke. Georgia Tech's coming into town. Like, we're going to be looking at that soon. Like,
yeah.
Like Georgia Tech.
They're definitely a couple tiers down, from in my book. Like, like those power rankings of college football. And again, like I think also for them not being associated with any conference, like rubs people the wrong way too. Like,
it does.
Who do you think? Like, you're that big and important that you're just like an independent thing. Like you could just create your own schedule, which they do, and there's always some bullshit ass schedule. And I think if they can get into like an SEC and start getting, I don't even know, man, like what can help them out because I don't even
They
think they
might
can
as
get those
well.
players.
No, they might as well join the AC because they have an ACC schedule, in my opinion. Like,
Right,
so
right,
just join the conference. I don't understand it. Like you're doing the AC, you play Clemson sometimes, you get
right,
Duke, you get Georgia Tech, you get Florida State. Just do that schedule. Like get
right.
Miami or whatever. Like just do that.
Yeah, they'll
Like I
sprinkle
don't.
in a Big Ten school,
Yeah, like
USC.
be in the ACC and you still get USC at the end. Just call it a day.
Yeah,
I don't understand this. Like
well, come to the Big Ten. Like,
I think that's the smart. But now the Big Ten's becoming the Big 20,
I know,
and
I
it's
know.
becoming hard. Like now, because then they should have the Big 10 years ago.
Right.
Now you're gonna have to compete.
Yeah.
So
Now you got
they
those
don't want to do that.
Yeah, next year you got USC coming in, right? Like all these other teams coming in, and college football is gonna be 3 divisions. I don't know what they're doing, man. It's tough, like to keep
Yeah.
up with it, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if this is
I'm
good or
really
not.
no. I'm really trying to fight the get off my lawn. Like I've had to like check myself this past like off season and going into the year because I'm like I'm ready to be like I don't know what this is, but I'm like hey. Seems like we'll still have big matchups, but will we have the traditions and rivalries? I don't know. That's where I feel like we're going to be missing, but we'll get the top teams.
Right, and I'm going to miss like Pac-10, Pac-12, like you know what I'm saying, like that conference, and we've talked about it a bunch of times, like you know watching some college football and a Thursday night watching San Diego State and Marshall Faulk like against Arizona at like 10 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to miss that stuff. You know what I mean? And those matchups like USC and UCLA, like I'm an East Coast guy, like and I love all my East Coast rivals, but like that, like I appreciated the Pac-10.
It
Pac-12.
brought you into a different world.
Right.
The Big 12 did. It brought you into, like you said, we knew the Northeast, right? That's where we're at. But then the SEC gave you the South.
Right.
Pac-10 and then Pac-12. Oh, okay. College football's big in the West Coast too, and then like you know the Mountain West kind of regions, and Big 12 in those middle states, Kansas State. Like you got to see all that. I thought it was really cool to see like college football across America, and like that was your window into it. Like, and I think that's going away.
Yeah, and then ironically, the Pac-10, Pac-12, we grew up with the Pac-10, so that's why we're like. So the Pac-12 struggled. They would have USC, like was pretty good for obviously for a portion of the time. The USC and you know some maybe Washington State and Oregon. Now they're all good. Like you know what I'm saying. Like that's probably the best conference in college football right now. And you got all these quarterbacks there, and you know, and it's a shame that this is the last year that this is how they're going. I mean, I love that they're going out like this, but man, like we've been waiting for them to get like this good, and now that they are. You know, they're disbanding. So it sucks, man. And again, I don't think we're going to get. There's going to be, like you said, there's going to be big games. We still have like a lot of these, like you know, Michigan, Ohio States are going to happen. Like you know, Alabama, Auburn, all these games, you know, are going to still happen. But you know, USC and Ohio State, like you know what I mean? Like I don't know. Like you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know how I feel like that. Is there going to be a Rose Bowl? Like you know what I'm saying? Like what's like all of that? Like it's tough, man. Like it's going to be a big adjustment. I don't know what's coming after this. I know that they're talking the 16-team playoff, and I don't know. It's just tough to like wrap my head around it because it's happening really fast.
No, and I think that's where and I think honestly to connect it all, I think what you're going to have, and this is what I've been telling people, is you're going to have more of, in a way, of this, of Miami, Notre Dame, which they're not traditional rivals, but an incident, a spark between coaches, a spark between players, something happens in a game one year, and you're going to have these short-term rivalries.
Right.
That are a moment in time instead of like, because Miami Notre Dame isn't this traditional every year, we'll see these two teams play. But for this moment in time in the 80s, it was a big deal. And I think that's what we're going away from the traditional rivalries, and we're going to have this.
Right. And it's almost like the NFL. Like, how do you create a rival? Not just divisional, play in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying?
Pretty
like,
much, yeah.
And if you play a certain team a couple times in a year, a couple times in a row, then that's where you start to develop that. So I guess that's what we can look forward to. But
yeah, I think that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, man.
That's
good
what's
point.
going to be.
But dude, it was so good to be back, man. I'm so good.
Yes.
I'm so glad to be back with you. So glad to be back with all of you listening, man. Like, we got some fun stuff coming up, man. I'm very excited, man. Very excited.
Absolutely, man. It's great to have you back. You were down. You're off the IR.
Yeah, man.
Sounding great though, man. You're sounding great. Like, I gotta be honest. So it's like you're ready to roll, and
Hell yeah.
I just think the rest of October, and there's some big anniversaries, some big things I can't wait to get in with you on in November and December to finish out 2023 strong, man. So let us know what you think. Are we too hard on Notre Dame? Not hard enough on Miami?
Right.
What do you think about this game and the legacies? Do you think we're wrong? Do you think Notre Dame is not living off of this game in the 88 season? Hit us up on Twitter or X, as they call it.
Yeah.
At Bigger Game Pod, and Instagram as well, at Bigger Game Pod. Let us know what you think. But for the man, the myth, the legend, the one guy who will not kick the extra point to tie it up. He's like Jimmy Johnson, going to go for 2 every time. My man, Jose Ruiz. I'm Deremy Dove. Thank you guys for listening to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose.
Peace.